tell themselves. So we wanted a lot of space to tell those stories. And that, of course, leads back to the challenge of writing that news every day, getting it mounted, managing it, where does it go, how long does it stay up, and what appears where. Another of the goals, identity. Our design, want a consistent look and feel among our electronic and print communications. And we worked with a firm in Raleigh. It was when we undertook to determine how much outsourcing, which Wayne is going to discuss in greater detail, to do in our website development. One of the things that we were particularly interested in was working with somebody who would be local, who we could sit across the table from, listen to our goals, and we could establish the brand and be consistent in our electronic and print communications. Messaging, of course, also coordinate with print materials. We can target audiences much more specifically through the website, and we can enhance our message with additional text, of course, use of photography, video, links, other information. Again, much more efficient and much more cost-effective way to communicate. I think work in progress and feedback is key. This is something that is still, that we're still finding to be very important. From very early on in the process, we used a lot of focus groups, alumni, students, administrators, faculty, to, as we developed the design of the website, both in terms of look and feel and how the content was going, how the navigation was going to work. It was really important to get buy-in up front. And also on an ongoing basis. There are a lot of lessons learned as we roll out the different departments' pages, and I think it's important to be open to have flexibility in how you address the challenges as they arise, and of course be very responsive to our users. So with that, I will turn it over to Wayne, who's going to talk a little bit more about how we work with our designers.
Okay. The website redesign was already underway when I came to Duke Law 2 years ago, and I was a little surprised by the progress that it had taken to that point, although it was also a very interesting effort. So I'm going to talk a little bit about an effort that failed, from our opinion, and what we learned from that to proceed in a way that I think was more natural to us, was more successful. First, I'm going to, this is the outline. I'm going to talk a little bit about considerations. I'm going to start with the general and then get very specific about our experience. Considerations for when you might want to outsource development of a website. Some red flags for when you might think that outsourcing has not gone successfully or might go awry. Some considerations for development, and finally show you a bit about the steps that we undertook. Considerations for outsourcing. I'm sure everyone has a list when they go into the question of, can we afford to do it ourselves? Can we afford not to do it with a professional design firm? Design versus control. Control was something that became obvious to us very early on, where we felt like with the first firm that we worked with, we weren't in control of the process. They were defining the process. New ideas versus familiarity. We were constantly running into the, well, this is how we do it now, but is it the way that we should be doing it in the future? And finally, whether you get a package that is static, is not something that you can work with very easily, or whether you're in a state of ongoing development, which I think probably the majority of us would agree is the natural state of web development. So that does speak, I believe, towards in-house development. Okay, red flags. If you feel like you've ceded control over the project, I think it's time to think about whether outsourcing is the right solution. you should be defining your own goals. And I'm sure there are many different processes out there, but I believe the wrong process is to say, call up, Webs R Us and say, we want a website. Because what you want is a plan to approach developing your website. Define your process. We felt comfortable with the second firm we dealt with because their process very much approximated our own desire for how the steps would proceed, whereas the first, it didn't. Now, my perception, of course I did come in late, but my perception was at Duke Law, we started with a client-only relationship. We were clients. We had contracted for a communications message, a website, and print production, as if that were something that could be put in a contract and solved that way. What we ended up with, in my own definition, is we provided the message. After that first time, we felt comfortable defining our message. We outsourced the design of the website, but the actual development was all done, or the majority of the development from that initial design was done in-house. Some considerations for development. And I came to this the hard way, this first one. A minimum of content management is essential. I came from an environment where we had always hand-done our websites, no problem. What we discovered very quickly is that it was getting out of control. The site design was so complex in terms of HTML layout that we suffered immediate entropy. Errors crept in. Pages that should have been exactly the same had different layout. We had differing interpretations of what the templates were, so that in fact, even if errors didn't creep in, at the end of a subsection's development, 2 different subsections, the pages looked incredibly different. And when we decided that, well, we didn't want this search name or that global navigation name, we discovered, my God, now we've got to go through and change 100 pages. What happens when it's 2,000? And so we decided very early on that we couldn't do anything without content management. And so Nick will speak to what we did in-house to develop our content management. And then you've got to think about the user, the value that is added by introducing forms of consistency. Obvious ones are navigation. You'll see our navigation scheme if you have not already. And even specialized content features become something that adds value for the user because it's not just noise on the page. It is something that they recognize as a feature. All right, so now I'm going to move on to some of the steps along the way. You are going to see things that have never seen the light of day. Not that many, but we'll talk a little bit about them. Just to give you an idea of the process we went through. We started with what we affectionately call word pairs, where we were given a marketing message in the form of word pairs that we found very unsettling. And we also discovered that what we were was not a law school, but a marketing machine for a law school. Now, this was the first website design that we got. Now, when I first saw it, I didn't like it at all. When I went back much later, I said, well, actually, that's kind of a nice page. And then I had to go back and say, well, what was it that bothered me about this? And there were lots of different reactions, as everyone knows. Design takes on a life of its own. I'll just tell you what bothered me. This is like this is a banner advertisement on a homepage. And Mark's a great guy, but this just didn't work for us. And then we started looking around at the other elements, and it wasn't our branding. It wasn't what we had settled on long before, actually, as the Duke Law logo. It was like a generic page that had our banner on it. And we found that distressing, aside from a few other things, but otherwise, a fairly well-designed page, very competent, nice design sense. All right, then we we terminated that relationship, and we started working with a design firm that also had the communications sense and also did print, because that was very important for our communications approach. So we didn't have 90-degree tangentials on our messages. I'll give you, and what we also found in terms of their operating procedure that I just loved is that they said, well, we'll give you different looks. You tell us what you want. We're going to interpret 3 different ways, and you tell us what you like. So here are the 3 interpretations. This is interpretation number 1, very sparse. We didn't want a lot of ornateness. We felt like our message could come through without ornate design. We wanted to highlight news. We wanted to be able to update content frequently, have people come here to understand that this is where the law school represents itself. We wanted a set and relatively small number of global navigation items. Search had to be everywhere. Here, very small, but there's our branding. So they got that message very nice. This seemed a little too sparse to a lot of people. I did not like these little clever scroll boxes. I said, you know, you can't have people searching down a scroll box to see that we actually have 10 things going on, not 3. Here was another one. Now, if you've seen our homepage, you will know that this is what later became the design we accepted. Here, very, very strong emphasis on the events. Global navigation here across the top, a footer across the bottom, an emphasis on visual imagery, although not overwhelming. And then here's the 3rd. I loved this when I first saw it, but it was just too busy for a homepage where you want to get content across. There was a kind of a re-emphasis of a marketing message, but here very personalized. I thought this was very clever, kind of a countdown box. We could have had CALI in here. And you break out some of the different items. So that we got these 3. We had a very long discussion based upon very concrete efforts, and we came to what we felt very comfortable with. The next step was approaching the question of standards and accessibility. We discovered that even though we loved the design aspect and we felt comfortable working with the people on the HTML side, they didn't produce HTML that we felt we could work with, especially if we were going to inscribe it, as it were, in our content management. So poor Nick ended up rewriting most of the fancier layout HTML that we got from them. That was a standards and accessibility question. Now I'm going to illustrate one of the questions that we ended up wrestling with. Nick said, what's the difference? Can you see what the difference is between these 2? I'm just curious. Anybody? I'm sorry? Yeah, the main font. It comes across really blurry here. But when we initially got it, everything was the smaller font. And I said, you know, and it's set with pixels, so some browsers, like IE, 90% of the market, won't allow you to adjust pixel settings in style sheets. So we said, you know what, it's all right for the breadcrumbs, it's even all right for a menu, but we can't have text in that size. So overriding their design sense, we said, look, we've got to have these in 12 pixel. All right. What was that? You're over time? All right. Okay. Page templates. What we got from our design firm was ultimately very little, but it was worth an immeasurable amount to us. What we got were templates that we then dissected into the content management Nick will talk about. And I'm going to give you 2 examples of these, of the templates. You'll recognize we have our branding bar here. We have room up top for something that provides local definition. In this case, we just repeat our name. Some of the departments have very idea-specific images there. So here's global navigation. Here's breadcrumbs in a logical progression as opposed to physically, where is it in the hierarchy? There's a logical order. And then this takes up the full page. You can't see this very well because for some reason we have very few pixels here, but if I decrease the size, you'll see it resizes within limits. So that's one template. We've got our kind of newsy box over here. There are 3 spaces. For the 3 space, fill the page template. This is a larger menu. Only the home page has pull-down menu here, which I actually wasn't intending to show, but all the pages have a footer with the same main page menu as a footer, and of course the Duke Law brand and the reference back to Duke. So that's what we call a sub-site homepage. It's not the homepage, which has its own look, but it's a homepage for a department, a program, what have you, along those lines. The other main template that we defined was a content page. We had told them we want white space. We want to be able to put our content and highlight the content. So you'll notice it doesn't have the banner across the top for branding or for local branding. It has the universal banner. It's got the breadcrumb. It's got a menu. This is actually a smaller menu. I don't know if you can see that. And then here is content. Now, unfortunately, you won't be able to see this on this size screen. But even if I stretch this across, is it going to let me? No, it won't let me. This content area will not grow. So if I had a page, if I had a monitor 1,400 pixels across, I'm still only going to get text across here. That was our decision for a content area because we didn't want people scanning across the whole page. And this was just, there are many other solutions to control that problem, but this was our way of addressing that. So those are 2 examples of templates. And I believe, let me see if I threw anything else up here. No? All right. With that, I'm going to blank this out and invite Nick up to talk about our content management.
How many people are familiar with content management systems? As users? As implementers? Who's never heard of a content management system? Who knows what it does? Okay.
It's the mute.
There it is. Okay. I'm Nicholas Drury. I'm a Web Services Coordinator here at Duke Law. And given that you're somewhat familiar with it, I may use some terms which will mean something to you. I've tried to keep it fairly understandable, so excuse me if I fail in that respect. Use the keyboard. So basically from the communication point of view and getting our message across to people, and both internally we had some needs in different levels of technophilia in staff. We basically needed to allow the process of the redesign, going all the way from complete content redesign to the cosmetic makeover, to run more smoothly. So the cosmetic makeover look is a big one. Things like changing the navigation on 50 pages, 100 pages fairly easily, that kind of thing. That turned out to be really important because we do have the navigation locally for a subsection of pages, which is the same. And then at the top of every page that's in the new design, we have the breadcrumb, which is just a little trail to the pages you're at. So that's a unique element on most of the pages. and we needed to automatically generate that. The entropy that Wayne talked about was, that's controlled by style sheets, and we found that very quickly. A style would be missed by one of the trails, or there'd be an extra space in there, and it would just suddenly drift from the coherent design that we were looking for. That's part of the coherence, and the other part is when you have the same piece of content that appears in different places throughout the site. Generally, you don't want to do it. I'm sure most of you probably do it. Easily, that gets out of date just from missing the updates to the second or third version of that. And we wanted to do this stuff without really requiring any programming from the end users. Whenever we designed the content management system, we didn't know what the design was going to be. So the system had to be flexible, and it had to encourage consistency just as a kind of built-in feature. How we kind of tried to do that is the standard content management system way, which is based on components. We really had a very simple component set. Haven't gone too far down the sort of taxonomy line, but the components basically are things like page definitions, which describe the components which are used then later to build the pages. They can also do things like reference functions, which will cause the generation of the page navigation, put that in the page when it's built. One thing we used to do in the battle days was to make changes to websites and then put it live and say, what do you think? Which wasn't always desirable. So now we can say, what do you think before it goes live? Which is good, although it can lead to longer release times. Just because of some other background issues, the pages must be generated and be served from the file system statically rather than dynamically in response to user requests. So quickly going over some features. It's basically an enhanced templating system by which components within the system are referenced by little placeholders within the components. You can have as many of those as you want, and it's really very simple little HTML comments which perform that direct substitution. We just parse those comments out, plug in whatever we need. And the components can also cause programs to run to do things like generate those navigation sets. We needed also control of the look so that we could keep some of the communication goals in place. And we do that by working with the departments on any individual customization that they need from the grand overall site design. And we make most of the components that contain those placeholders to do the special things, and then the content chunks are where the end users would work. The page definitions are XML based, and it's kind of a simple mapping type situation, where these tags, in the example here, for builder title, that would be replaced by the title tag in the XML definition. We already had an existing parser to handle the stuff. We just enhanced it a little bit to deal with the XML definitions. And we can add new features to the system pretty easily. It's a file system-based interface. We had tried different things like searching for the component by component type or the content, but that seemed a little unusual to people. And also replicating most operating systems, there's a context menu. So in Windows, if you right-click, you'll get that little menu. And that would have different items in it because the objects can perform different tasks. If you are implementing or have implemented, you'll know the build versus buy question comes up very quickly, and that the evaluation cost of do I build or buy can be very steep. If you look for the exact phrase content management systems, which is very per search, but you'll get over 500,000 results. So it's a highly talked about and much in development area. In the open source world, considered usable systems, there are about 73 ongoing viable ones, which is still a heck of a lot to evaluate. In our case, there could be a university-wide content management system, and we wanted to be able to separate our content out so that we could easily plug into that when it's available to us. And as with any development project, you want to try and satisfy the basic use cases early, and then develop and build upon that to increase your functionality as you go along. we released initially in October of last year, and we've had roughly about one release each month since then, just adding different little features. I do quick questions. Any? None?
How big is your development staff?
Me. For the most part, I'm the main developer. Wayne is adept at some scripting, but generally it's myself. And I'll just this is about 50 seconds if that suits you. Quick demo of the parsing of a page.
Why do you build versus buy?
Because we're going to move to enterprise content management system.
That will be bought or built?
That will be bought.
Okay.
University-wide.
One thing to note about that is last spring the university here said, we're going to get a content management system. We're going to get an RFP out in 2 months. It is now a year later, and I think they're finishing it. So, and we knew our schedule for getting the redesign out. And since Nick had already done some work to support some of our electronic journals, we were in a good position to start and work on our own.
So this is a page being built as it would happen when we produce that static HTML file on the server. This is the definition up here, and basically the parser just looks through this XML definition, takes out the pieces, and it goes out to the database, pulls in the page. This is the shell here. It steps down, it's getting the title now from the database. It brings it, puts it in. You can't see it here because it's in the browser, but it puts it in the page. We have a number of different layouts. This is a standard content layout. One panel on the left for navigation, and the main panel for the content. We'll go get the navigation here. It's actually a function that calls the web service, passing the parameter for the link style. Two different main types of menus. This is the smaller kind. It's finished with panel 1 now. We'll go on to panel 2. This is where the meat of the page is, the main content. Again, back to the database, and I'll just insert that in by replacement, and then the page is built. So that's the kind of production end. With that, over to Brian.
Did you consider the browser compatibility?
In terms of viewing pages?
Yeah.
Yeah. Everything should degrade nicely. It's as web standards compliant as we can make it.
How do the users interface with the content developers?
Through the app, which is it's called very exciting web publisher, and I can demo that to you.
That'd be great. Those of you who aren't familiar with content management, one of the cool things about what they've done is that that panel 2 content, since it's a separate item, I think, a separate item in the database, could in fact be wrapped in a variety of places and with a variety of different wrappers. And reusing content is one of the really powerful aspects of this thing. You sort of have to start thinking in 3 dimensions in order to get it. But if you're used to using content management, that's obvious to you, and you say, okay, of course it makes sense. But for a lot of us that come out of a linear world and we think in a sort of a straight line, when that light bulb clicks on, a lot of opportunities will open up for you. I want to turn this in a slightly different direction. Instead of talking about specific redesign, I want to talk broadly about designing and redesigning. One of the interests that I have, and I hope that I'll be able to pique some of your interest as well, is in trying to add an extra component to the design of websites. So I manage websites. I'm responsible for the websites for Loyola Law School. We've got somewhere around 11 sites, thousands of pages. And my responsibility is on the front end of things. I work closely with the back end guys. I can answer some of those kinds of questions, but ultimately they keep the whole thing running. But in the end, my opinion doesn't matter. The reason is because even though I build the sites, I don't actually use them. I am not the person who this is designed for. Neither are the designers or the programmers. And so I might know a lot of this content. The designers and programmers might know a lot of this content. But say, for example, the admissions web pages, they're not for the admissions office. They're not for the person who programs the online application. It's for graduating pre-law students who we want to apply. We want to figure out what can we do to make it so that they'll apply to our school rather than Duke. So frequently these things get driven from what I would say, and certainly going to propose, is the wrong perspective. So it's great that my dean has an opinion about the way the law school pages should look, but every once in a while I find myself in the unenviable position of telling him that in the end it doesn't really matter what he thinks either. And end users are the ones that matter, but usually we build all this stuff, we spend months and months, we go through a whole bunch of design versions, and in the end we roll the thing out, and it's that old if you build it they will come. You sort of hope that they like it and chew your fingernails down. There's another way to do this, and I want to sort of talk you through that a little bit. But first off, I wanted to point out the web is a new medium. There are you can't just use what you knew in print and so on. I thought it was really interesting when you were talking about how your first design firm kind of did things a certain way. The next design firm kind of came at it a different way. Outside design firms are going through a transformation process as it relates to the web. Some of them get it, some of them don't get it. And even though they have a great print portfolio, they might even have a great television video portfolio, they may not, in fact, meet your needs from a web design standpoint. It's a new medium, and different things are appropriate for it. So what we do, what I do, is I just blame the users. If they can't figure it out, it's their problem. They should be smarter. The problem is they're not smarter, and they're maybe getting smarter as users are getting more and more comfortable with the web. They're learning which is the back button and which is the home button, and that when you click that little home button at the top of the screen, it might not take you to the home page for my website. But they're going really slowly at it. So since I can't change them, what can I do to change my thing? So I'm going to talk about focusing on users. I want to talk about how to do it and give you some examples, an actual example from just the past weeks at the law school. I'll probably show you stuff that you're not supposed to see. Then I want to present some opinions to you. This is the stuff that you'll be able to disagree with me on. Some of it is from the sort of the usability gurus that are out there in the world. Some of it is my own personal opinion. But I want to give you some things to think about in terms of what we know about users now, what's emerging about users now. I'm going to skip this slide so that we have time for questions. The difference between us and between users and us typically relates to that users are in a hurry. They come to the site and they want to get from point A to point B. I want information. I want to apply. I want to do something right now. We, on the other hand, we've invested time in this site, and so it's important to us, and we'll spend time digging through the thing. We know web browsers. We know how they work. We know how to make them work. We read URLs at the top in the location bar, and we sort of infer where we are in the site. And users don't always do that stuff. In fact, eye tracking studies on users suggest that their eyes go right smack to the middle of the screen, which is not what you'd expect, and it's not what happens in the print world or in the television world. And then it starts bouncing around, looking for something that they can click on. An interesting thing you can do with users is give them a screen that has instructions and a submit button. And they will click the submit button without ever reading the instructions. Because they want to do something. They're coming to the site, they want to do something. And meantime, former editor and writer, I spent a lot of time writing those instructions. They're pretty important. The user has completely ignored them and gone straight on. We do this through user testing. At the law school, we are just getting started in a phase where we're going to be doing a lot of user testing on a lot of different things. With user testing, this is where we bring in some people and we put them in a real-life situation. We put them in front of a computer, in front of a web browser, at a desk that looks like a regular life thing. We give them a task to do, and we watch what they do. And so there's some specific things that I do here. I like focus groups at the beginning of a project. I like surveys maybe at the end of a project, although the only people who fill out surveys are the people who are pissed off, and I don't want to hear from them. So I get very skewed results. But but in the middle, as I'm going through a process, if I've got some designs, wouldn't it be great to take a piece of paper and hold it up with little thumbnail sketches that I've drawn on and say, okay, if this were a web page, what would you click on to get done what you think you need to do? I've done this with users. They understand that it's not a web browser. They understand that it's not paper. And you're only going to get some really broad assessments if you use those sort of paper prototyping. But how many programmers are in this room? People who actually do programming. How many times have you spent a lot of hours on something and handed it off to your customer, the people who asked for it, and they then want to redo it all? It happens a lot, and it drives you crazy because I'm a content guy, I'm not a programmer, and I tend to think you guys just sort of snap your fingers and it's all done, but there are hours and hours that go into this. And we pay you way too much to waste your time. Well, we don't pay you enough, but it's too much to waste your time. And so it would be great if I can figure out first using little paper prototypes or even screenshots that I put up on a web browser or something to try to determine from real actual users, is this going to work? And then hand it off to you so you can build it one time, or you can get started building it knowing what you're going to do. We're not going to have to tear it all the way back down. I want to try something. We'll see if it works. Oh boy, I got to come over here. I'll be back, don't worry. This is the prototype of our web-based registration system. We hope that we'll be able to register for classes in the fall using this system. Last week and the week before, I ran about a dozen testers through, 9 testers through the beginnings of this system. And we learned some very interesting things. Now, what you need to know is this system has already been customized from what the customer gave us. Everybody's been asking me today, so I'll tell you, we use a package formerly known as Exeter, formerly before that known as Fannie Mae. It's now been bought by SCT, and we think that it's probably at end of life and will be sort of absorbed into Banner. So we're not sure what we're going to do with it, but we have it. It has a web front end, which is the most horribly written piece of code possible. We do have some ability to change some of the stuff. We have a very good Oracle programmer who's been working with us. And so the system here is you would come into log into the system, and you would then, that went wrong, there we go. You would then click on the registration tab. Except one of the things we found is they don't click on the registration tab, they click on this thing down here. And the reason why is because their eye goes to the middle of the screen, and they start looking for something to click on. It doesn't tend to go up. And so they start reading downwards, they end up here. Fine, takes them to the right spot. I guess I'm okay with that. This John Doe has been registered into a variety of courses, but you can click on Add Drop Course over there if you want to add or drop a course. There's a second screen, which is redundant in some ways, but it's built into the package. We can't get rid of it. But from here, you can do 2 things. You can choose in the status bar to drop down from enrolled to drop this class. Or you can go down here and click the button for Add Course. Students get very confused about this because it's one page where you can do 2 different things, and you do it in 2 different ways. So we had to do some rewriting on this thing, and in fact, I'm continuing to rewrite on this thing, hopefully send back to the programmer yet today to see if we can take another round of this, because this doesn't seem that hard. Once you explain it to somebody that this, choose something here to change your status, choose something here to add a course. But our users didn't get it. They're smart, we have very good, well-educated students, but for some reason it just didn't seem to work for them. Now I need this button. Once you do click on Add a Course, you get to a search box. You type in the name of the course you're interested in. They had trouble with this. They all wanted to fill in both boxes. It's the what I refer to as the failing a test theory. On the internet, for some reason, people fill out every single field of every form. I think because you don't want to, get that the following fields are required and have to go back and redo it. So we've now added in a thing right here that says or, and we retest it. And all the students get it. They go, oh, one or the other. It makes sense to me. I would never have guessed that. I've been doing web stuff for 10 years. I would never have assumed that the users would have, needed that. When you click search, you get your results. You can do 2 things on this screen. You can click the section link to get information about the section, or you can click the add button to add the course. And I don't remember which was the next screenshot I gave you. The add button. You've enrolled in the course. We already changed the result. It used to say passed. And the students all went, woo! And now alternative dispute resolution is now added in the course. You can drop from this course and so on. We are a little concerned right now when we get into production what happens when they're on a wait list, and we're really spending a lot of time talking about how do we communicate to them, how do I enroll myself off of the wait list from the course. But this is the system. The first round of testing was 5 users. The second round of testing was 4 users. Because we made some very quick cosmetic changes, like adding a little OR link into the text. And I think the registrar's office will actually be here presenting later on today. I think they have really bought into this idea of asking users for input, giving them an actual example to do something, and observing what they do without making judgments about it. Wow, I don't want to do that. So what I want to do is click somewhere.
Would it be better to previous slide, add new under the fourth column?
Yes, and I have very limited ability to move that button because of the way the package is built. The comment was if we slid it over so it was under the course column and you put it in there, and we have that button essentially has to be at the bottom of the table, and it has to be to the right-hand side of the screen. So we've got it about where we can get it. But you're right. So what I want to do really quickly, and we're going to run out of time, so I'm going to go fast. This presentation will be available. We're doing okay with the streaming of it. I will also make it available online for somebody who wants to get it without my big melon in the way. But I'm going to go very quickly about this. I'm going to do 4 things. I'm going to talk about general good ideas. These are things that user testing has sort of suggested that users like, that users tend to do, that they find helpful, good suggestions, things like that. Before coming out here, I surveyed a whole bunch of my friends and people that I know, professionally and so on. I asked them, when you're using websites, what do you like, what do you not like? They all said, if you can kill splash pages, that would be great. And I had to send them a message back saying, well, I can't, but I'll tell them. The interesting thing here is under good writing, if users see text before they see buttons, is it on this screen or is it on the last one, the previous one? Users see text before they see buttons. That's counterintuitive to me. I spent a bunch of years as a designer, I spent a bunch of years as a writer, and now as a web guy, I'm sort of doing a little bit of each of that stuff. And I would expect that the graphics would be the thing that people would see. But for some reason, probably because we're in a hurry, we're used to graphics being a waste my time kind of a thing, so we go straight to the text. But I started thinking about that. We spend all our money on designers. And we let anybody write who's got a job. And I started thinking, gee, I wonder if maybe we should try to rethink this a little bit and bring in some writers or try to write some guidelines for writing and so on. I actually had started a presentation on how to write for the web, which maybe I'll bring in some other time, but we haven't, not today. The other thing that I think is interesting is these square graphics become advertisements. You mentioned it when in the early design of the thing. Users tend to see things, particularly at a corner of the screen, what is sometimes referred to as the graveyard. They will find graphics, and their eye will start to go to it and move away because it looks like it might be an ad, and we're so sick of advertisements that we're training ourselves not to look at them. I find that to be a sort of a fascinating thing. The other observation I want to make is I think it's cool as the web guy when I can cut the ribbon on a brand new site design and all my pages are changed and it's everything, the whole new navigation is all done and ready, because then I can put out a news release or have a party or whatever. Users go crazy because they used to find it by clicking here, 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 and I get to the spot that I need. And in general, users, if they know where they're going, they don't care how many clicks they have to go to, as long as they know what they're doing. If they don't know what they're doing, then they get really mad about having to, click a whole bunch of times in a bunch of different places. So all of your sort of regular users, the people who use your site all the time and they've learned to muddle through by, doing certain things, when you radically change your design, then you pull the rug out from underneath them. And this is something I've recently started really kind of thinking a lot about, is that New users will learn my site at whatever pace they learn the site. But the existing users, I got to be nice to them. And that's one thing to do. I want to talk quickly about home pages, category headers. Again, I'm not going to hit all the points that are up here. Home pages are different. They are not just like other pages. And category, you called them subsite. Subsite homepage. But this would be like a department homepage or so on. It's the page where you have sort of a jumping off point to get to some other place. And the user's goal is, where am I and where can I go to get done what I want to get done? And so on homepages and these subsite homepages, anything you can do to sort of ease them into the place where they want to be, that's really helpful. Content pages. These are the ones that have a lot of text. And what we're hearing from users is that they don't mind scrolling through all kinds of text if they know that this is the page, this is a destination page, that this is information that they need. They'll read and scroll and read and scroll. Users are getting used to the scroll bar. I've got a tiny screenshot up here, but they're getting used to this scroll bar being here. If it's clear that the content goes off the edge of the page, as you can see here, the words just sort of trail off, the users will find the scroll bar, they'll use the scroll bar, they're fine with that. If it's not clear that there's more content down below, they don't find it. It used to be about 50% of the users didn't scroll at all. That number appears to be growing, and it depends on which page you're on. But on content pages, that particular thing is okay. We tend to use site navigation on the left-hand side. That seems to be sort of an emerging trend. But what we really want on these content pages is what's related to the stuff where I'm at now. If this is a destination page and it has information on it, I don't want to hide the information, and I want to be able to give people things that are related to here. I may take off on a content page all of this navigation except back to home, which for us is right at the very top left corner of the screen. I might get rid of all of this other sort of stuff in order to fill the screen for a variety of reasons. But related information, I'm going to keep on there. Links to related information. Applications are different. Those of you who are programming, this would, in broad sense, this is forms. On an application page, users react very differently than they react to content pages. We're getting used to forms. They're starting to know how to fill them out. In fact, they know so much about how to fill them out, they're not going to read the instructions that are on your page. On our JD and LLM applications pages, you can't get to a form field until you read through the instructions page. Because if there's a form field on the page, they're not going to read it anyway, so we put that all in front of the thing and we'll require them to scroll down, click continue, and then they start the applications process. Our application used to scroll down and down and down, and then the user would click submit after spending 20 minutes of filling out this form, and then they'd get the myriad of errors. You need to fill out this, you need to fill out this, you need to, and then they've sort of wasted all their time. Or God forbid they were on a dial-up service, and because they haven't actually done anything, the service cut them off. So we changed it when we redesigned the thing. It's now page 1 of 8. It's an 8-step process, the 8th step being to review your application before you submit it. You're welcome to take a look at that. I'd be happy to show it to people if you're particularly interested in that. I'm not going to tell you that it is the model for a perfect web application, but it does use a number of the things that are that I'm listing here as sort of good practices. And finally, I want to bring up a couple of resources that you might find interesting if you want to look at a little bit more of this stuff. My favorite book in the world is this thing called Don't Make Me Think. The author of this book takes the perspective that users may be very smart and may be very interested in your site, but they don't want to spend a lot of time on it. They want to do stuff, not figure it out. And it's written in a very easy way to digest. I like it a lot. Now's a good time for questions, either for me or for the other members of the panel. Yes?
One of the things I was looking for is design considerations for the multiple audience that you have prospective students, you have prospective faculty, and existing through within designs, take care of each without creating, 3, 4, 5 sites.
The question, if you all didn't hear, is how do you handle different audiences? At Loyola Law School, we actually make separate websites for them. So, for example, there is a new admits website that has a separate URL specifically for new admits. You can't get to it unless you've been admitted to the law school, and we send you a letter that says, congratulations, all your questions will be answered on our new admit website. So we do that. And then we have a separate public homepage, which is sort of for the general public. We include links to symposia and things that people would be interested in. All of our admission stuff is there. Then we have an intranet, and that has the internal focus for students, staff, and faculty. We're working on redesigning our intranet to meet specific needs for students or faculty or staff, and we're trying to figure out right now how are we going to determine who you are so that we can, serve up the relevant stuff. This is part of our portal project as we move into portals. So I don't know if that answers your question, sort of, and yeah.
I'll just say, in our efforts, at some point, we were faced with that question: how do you deal with X number of audiences? Do you have multiple sites? Obviously, we also have a hidden admit site, but what we ultimately decided was the solution was to say, what did all these people have in common? They have in common a law school. What goes on at the law school? And that's what we made our homepage. It really became a question of, in a sense, we were aggravating some of our existing users who were used to very, very much a menu-oriented hierarchy where they knew their menus, they went down, they finally got to what they wanted. We said, what we're going to do is develop a presence, a web presence, that offers something to everyone. Plus, because it brings them together, it also shows what we believe, kind of categorically, it shows all of them that they share a mission. And that includes the admitted students, although there is students interested in applying. There is a separate place they can go directly. But we really did come to the conclusion that it was altogether too much effort to slightly modify when what we really wanted to communicate was that everything that went on in this law school should be of interest to the community members.
Yeah. Question in the back.
Will you be making your slide presentation available?
Yes, I will. How can we convey that to people?
Elmer Masters is collecting all these presentations. They'll be on the CALI site.
Good.
I bet we could find you somehow at the Loyola site.
Yes, you can find me on the Loyola site. If you click the contact us, most of the email comes to me, which is such a great joy in my life. A question down here, son.
I had a question maybe for both of you. You did talk about being able to reuse content, which is super. And you guys are talking about coordinating print and electronic. And I'm wondering if you're reusing content in print and electronic, or is that more look and feel? You want to start?
We do both. Primarily times like right now, when it's the summer, we have less going on, and so we've taken, particularly in terms of the challenge of getting content and bringing more people on board. As you said, the writing is very key, and trying to get the writing to a certain level, and that's kind of an add-on for a lot of people here now in their jobs and contributing content in their department. So we've taken some of our magazine content, our profiles of alumni, placed them in different slots on our site, and but we also have tried pretty much to have a destination for, and when we talk about it in better terms later, but to get people to everything as quickly as possible. But I think in terms of fonts and look and feel, we very much coordinated all of that together. We've rolled out a New Look magazine, followed our New Look website, which is based on our New Look admission book. But we also do reuse content just because we're targeting so many different people, even journalists who might come onto our site and then read something about a professor, call up, okay, I want to comment from him now. So it's really helpful. These are people who we can't send our magazine to because it's too expensive to mail and to print all these copies. So if there's, we feel that the overlap is not so heavy that
For the design-wise, we have a lot of ownership issues regarding design, and I'm wondering if the web advancement or admissions, or if it was to come up with the design. Because if we were to go to the alumni magazine and say, we've got this new look, so do you, that might not go over so well.
No, it's truly collaborative. Sure, it's truly collaborative here because
I can't bring it very far, unfortunately. Better for you to come up.
When our communications group was created in the spring of 2002, just about every part of our communications world now comes through a central area. And so we have a communicators group that we initiated that kind of fell off because everybody had so much else on their plate to do already, but that is a contact in each of our administrative departments, a student, faculty member. So we really try to have everybody on board and feel as if they have a stake. Well, they do have a stake, but also a say in the direction that our design goes.
We have time for one more question.
Yeah.
I have a similar question for Brian. I think you answered it. It's about collaboration. You make it sound like you have the ideal job. You go to users, you find out what they want, you implement it, you do it. Amen. But don't other people in the university tell you, doesn't marketing get on you, we want it to look this way? And doesn't the dean say, I don't want these snazzy pictures or whatever?
I negotiate. Read The Art of War. If seriously, I spend a great deal of my time negotiating. There are a lot of things on that little application, that little 5-step application screen. There are a lot of things that I wish I could change that I can't because I've sort of pushed and fought the battle, and sometimes I win, sometimes I'm not. I don't. I can be very persuasive. I can certainly be persistent, but sometimes I don't get what I want. And that's the nature of my job. It's something I knew coming in as a website manager that I was going to have to do. I actually listed my business cards web coordinator rather than web administrator, whatever my official title is, because I like that concept that I build partnerships. And part of partnerships is I don't always get to do what I want to do. So in a short way, that's.
All right, thank you for your attention. And if you want further demos, these guys are right here.